Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Devoted Daydream Podcast. My name is Toni V, and as you can see, there's no one next to me. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a guest. My guest today is actually located in Los Angeles right now, and is someone that I'm very, very excited for you to meet. He's an award-winning filmmaker who has worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry, for names such as Kendrick Lamar, Kanye West. He has shot the very famous 7 Years music video for Lukas Graham, as well as many other videos for Lukas Graham. He's such an interesting guy, so many questions, and let's get right into it. Before we start, as per usual, I want to take you a little bit back to when you began your career as a filmmaker. How long ago was it, and how did you get into it?
So I started filming skateboarding and snowboarding plus 20 years ago, and making it was more performance based, not so much story. And I've been playing music pretty much my whole life, and I had a lot of friends that played music too. And when I moved to Copenhagen, we started hanging out in Taboo Records, which is the music studio of Suspect. And I just randomly had a camera from a local TV station there one night. I did a little bit of local TV to kind of get into the business, and I cut a little thing together, which ended up being, it was by coincidence, it was what they thought of as the single to the first Suspect album, which was still pretty underground at the time. But they really liked what I did, and claimed that whenever they would have a budget for the next video and the next album they would send out, they wanted me to do it. And they actually kept their word. So I think, was it 2003? I did the first video and shot it all on Super 8 film. And
Wow.
it was a little bit exciting because it was the first time I was working with light as well, like artificial light. Until then, I'd only been shooting natural light, and I had a gaffer with me on set for the first time, and he claimed that he didn't think anything was going to be on the film, so made me really nervous. And we had a lot of people on set. Long story, but we had a boat, and we were paying a guy so we could be at this boat for, I think we had a 12-hour day, and we had LOC and Nia and Uso, all these. And at this point, they hadn't really made the big names for themselves yet. They were all names in the industry, but hip hop or like gangster rap wasn't as big in Denmark at that point. But I had all these people on set. But luckily, when I sent in the film for development and I got it back 3 weeks later, which was kind of nerve-wracking, there was something on the film. So that was a little too exciting, but also I was very happy we had anything. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then it's the first few years in the early zeros were just tough. You know, you have to do whatever you can, like any chance you get to make something. And then at some point I got a job at DR that's seen some of my stuff, and it rolled from there. With it was weird because I didn't really know where I was in the whole thing, like if I was going to work, like actually function in a professional environment. Like all the stuff I'd done was self-taught. I applied for film school a few times and I never made it in. I made it to the last tests but didn't get in. So to start working in a professional environment, I was a little bit nervous if it was going to work, but it did, and my level was working fine with the people around me and stuff. So
It's very interesting that you mentioned that. I was going to ask you if you're completely self-taught, but you are, and you actually did not go to film school. Do you think that right back then, but also right now, it's important for the filmmakers to go to film school, or do you think self-teaching is and practice it's better?
It's tough to say what's better. I think it always depends on the person. Like I've always been used to doing things on my own, because with skateboarding, for instance, I started skateboarding when I was 10 years and nobody could really teach you back then. You had to learn everything on your own. And I also started playing drums I also started playing drums when I was a kid, and never really took lessons either, and started playing in bands, and it was all like learning by ear. So for me, it was kind of natural. I wanted to, because I knew that's what I found out late that that's what I wanted to do in my life, but I still. It wasn't really on purpose. Like I wanted to make school, like go to school. So I applied several times in Denmark and also in England and Stockholm as a cinematographer and mainly as a documentary filmmaker. But yeah, I never made it in. Things worked out and it's fine. But back then it was also harder to get your hands on equipment, whereas now you can be like basically everybody can go out and buy equipment and start going because it's very so much more inexpensive now than it was back then. So I mean, you can definitely like obviously it's possible to make it, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of good things come from film school, and I think that the problem nowadays can be that a lot of people think they're doing fine as soon as they can pick up a camera and edit something together. But I think what's often lacking and where you often need more education is on the storytelling side of things. Like it's tough. It's really I still think it's hard to tell a good story and to make a story entertaining, whether it be a 2 to 3 minute format or if it's an hour and a half. So I think school is good for a lot of things. I'm not 100% self-taught in the sense that I've been taking courses whenever I thought something was interesting. Like I was in a film school in Canada for a month, independent media producers program it was called, when I was that was in 99, 2000. And then recently, actually twice, I've been taking Robert McGee's script writing course. He wrote a book. He's like a script guru. He wrote a book called Story, which is like this fat. But he also does courses on it, so you can go and take the course, and it's a four-day course where you basically sit there for 12 hours and just listen to this man who's like really good at story telling and script writing. So what I think it's super important to be critical to your own material and keep looking at what you do, and if you keep developing, because you can often it's easy to just settle and say, now I know how a camera works, now you can use a program, now I'm done. But that's where it begins.
When you mention about it's important to be critical, I've noticed that the big problem for a lot of people is that they're going for the perfectionist road, and they feel that everything it has to be absolutely polished and perfect, and they end up not really completing anything. Do you believe that it's better for a project to be done rather than perfect?
Personally, I don't believe in the word perfect. I don't think there's anything. There's no such thing as perfect, and especially in a world where there's no right and wrongs. Like you can, with filmmaking, there's always different ways to go. So it's not like something is never really perfect, I don't think. But it's as long as you're doing things on your own, I think you should strive to make a product or like a film or whatever clip you're doing as good as possible. But it's also important to get it out. But I think what a lot of people are lacking is to give each other critiques. So if you start out, like, make sure that when you show like, you should show your films if you're I mean only if you're serious about it, like if that's the way you want to go or whatever, if you want to work in a professional environment and stuff, then I think you should show your things to other people and see how they react. Do they laugh in the right places? Do they feel something when you expect them to? And ask them afterwards about like what they thought and if they get the points you're trying to get through. Because you can always keep developing the story or the editing or the way you shoot. Sometimes you need to go in and, like, even on feature films now, they in a professional business like that's what people do. Like there's always extra shoots and B-roll you go out to get when the story is not where you want it to be. So yeah, definitely be critical to your own stuff.
Very good advice for everyone, including me. So you started establishing yourself as a bigger name in the Danish music industry, working with bigger and bigger artists. Eventually, you end up working with Lukas Graham. How did you actually meet? How did that relationship start?
So Lucas's managers used to work for Taboo Records, Suspects record label back in, I don't want to put years on that, but way back. So maybe the early 2000s. And so I knew him from back then. And when I heard Lucas the first time, I just heard the Criminal Mind song on YouTube, as a lot of other people, and I thought it was brilliant. And by coincidence, I found out his manager was Lasse, that I already knew. So I contacted him and said we should do something because this kid is gonna blow up. And he was like, I know, but somebody's already shooting on him. So Lucas grew up with this guy Jens, who's a really good still photographer, and he was already doing something on Lucas. But and then I moved to the US, and they were doing a thing in Denmark, and he blew up and into Germany and stuff. And I think a year later, they had some commercial money from a speaker brand called Dali, and they were going to come to the US, and that's where they played the first showcases in New York and LA. And Lasse his manager contacted me again if I was still interested, and obviously was. So that's when we did the two first episodes of the series that we sent out afterwards. And they liked what they saw, and his career just kept going the right direction. So we actually did 6 altogether. So which we now withdrew, so it's not long. It's no longer out there. But we did 6 episodes that were out for a while, and a lot of that same footage we're now putting together to a feature film. So that's why we took it back.
Yes, we will actually touch a little bit on that. But you're working on a big, larger scale documentary about Lukas Graham, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. But going back to the 7 years video, what did it go through your head when you heard the song for the first time? Did you immediately had an idea about what you want to do with it?
So I actually heard 7 years a long time before it was recorded, or even like on an album, because he used to sing it. Actually, the first day I shot with him in New York, he was singing it as a sound test. And I recorded the sound test, and it already then I thought it's one of those songs you hear the first time and you immediately resonate with it, and you can hear it's great. I think it's very rare to have a song like that. And while I was editing, I kept listening to it, and I thought it was great. And then I think what I did, I never really considered a music video, because for me it didn't really sound like a single. I thought it was something they were gonna have at the album for sure, but it didn't sound like a classical pop single for me, and especially not like the other songs they had out was stuff like Ordinary Things and Drunk in the Morning and stuff, and it was kind of, I don't know, I didn't see it as a single, so I never considered a video before they contacted me. Then I kept working with them for a few years, and then finally we got to the point with where they were going to send out the first single, and that's when it became serious, because usually in Denmark it's easier. You know the artist, or you meet with the artist and talk with them, and you talk about ideas, and you kind of get a sense of what they want before you write script or you pitch on things. Like, that's how it's always been pretty organic. But with 7 years now, he was on Warner, and Warner was believing, like they really believed in Lucas as an artist, and that he was going to blow up. But they had no idea who I was, and they had no idea who these Danish artists I'd been making videos for were. So I was a really small fish in that ocean. So I was contacted by a creative from Warner who said, it's fine, they want to use, like, because Lasse put me in contact with him, and because they really wanted me. They knew I'd been doing videos back in the day, and Lukas wanted to work with me because he always likes working with people he know already, and liked my work. And but Warner was they weren't in any way convinced that this was a good idea. So I was contacted by Warner, and they were like, so you want to pitch on the video, and that's fine, and we're gonna give you some money, and you should go do it, but you should just know that we really believe in this song, and if the video is not good enough, we're just gonna make another video. So
no pressure, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that fucked with me a little bit. But I wrote something I really believed in, and I thought could come out great, and Warner liked it too, and the first feedback I got when we after shooting was that they loved it. So yeah, we were, yeah, I was pretty happy with that, and pretty relieved.
It's one of my favorite music videos from that year, actually. I just loved how real it is, and at the same time how abstract it is. How did the filming take place? How long did you guys film it for? Did you plan some of the shots, or was it all completely natural?
Did we all plan it? No, it's actually pretty much all planned. Or there's obviously a few just like B-roll shots. We have this homeless woman with a fucked up shoe and big afro and stuff like that. Stuff like that we didn't plan, like the B-roll. But all the shots with Lukas and the band, and it's all planned. But the discussion before shooting was how to make it look as real as possible. Because I think Lukas works best, and his whole vibe and the vibe around the band and stuff works at the best when it has this real, raw, natural feel to it, like almost documentary kind of style. Because I feel his lyrics are a lot like that too. It's almost like rap music. I always kind of felt like rap music is a bit like documentary, even though they use a lot of aliases and stuff, but it's AKAs. But it was on purpose that we set it up in a way so it would look very raw and natural. So the concert that's in there was obviously, it wasn't something we set up, but I planned to shoot on that day, and for this, and we also set up lights and stuff backstage for when they came out afterwards, and we wanted that moment from them walking off stage and just being delirious by, you're always on a next level when after playing a concert. So that was staged, it was set up, but it was still real. It was kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was mockumentary, you can say. They were doing their own stuff, or their own what they would normally do, but in a controlled environment, so to speak. So it was set up, and then there were more set up scenes, like him singing on the top of the mountain, and I can't remember what's all in there, but it and all the Christiania stuff, it was also set up. We had 4 shooting days, 2 in LA and 2 in Denmark. And we planned it so we didn't have to fly them back and forth, but did it when they were already over here, we were shooting with them here. I had this is a DOP. I didn't shoot it myself. I had a DOP called Adam Jandrup, Adam Jandrup, who's shot a lot of the stuff I've done when I direct more and I don't shoot myself. So we flew him in and went through the whole thing with him, and same thing, he was in Denmark shooting that. So yeah, I think maybe 2 days here, and then a B-roll day, and then 2 days in Denmark.
I'm very curious about what's the story behind the explosion.
Oh yeah.
Were you like, fuck it, we have budget for explosion, let's do it?
No, I think Lukas has he sings a lot about when he writes, and that's part of what he was singing. He's singing in the 7 Years song as well. And so I included paper, and you have the paper raining down, and you have the I wanted lyrics to have this like a powerful image, and writing, and so it developed from like him writing, papers raining, and paper turning into fire, and the books on fire, and there's all these things, and then I don't know, somehow from there the idea of the book full of lyrics explodes, and then the image of what is it, heroes walking away from explosions. It kind of developed from there, and we were talking about it a bit before. Like I don't like at first. I think Lukas didn't really like the idea, but then I think he ended up just choosing to trust me or whatever. And I don't know. It was kind of a fun thing to do. The only thing is that there's pretty much only one thing or one place in Denmark you can do it. So it was tough location wise because we only had this one spot out at Holmen, which is what is it called out there? It doesn't matter, but yeah. So we kind of had to fuck around with the frame a bit to get a shot that didn't look like something you'd seen before.
Was it hard to pull off technically? Did you had a pyro team, and was it hard for you to work with something like that? I guess you weren't used to directing explosions.
I was just curious about it. I was really excited about it. I thought it was a fun thing to do. And there's this special effect guy, Homer, who does a lot of stuff like that. And I've worked a little bit with him before, and also after. He's also the guy who. I don't know if you want to talk about that video too, but their video where we fill up the car with water and it bursts in the end and stuff. The same guy did that too. Like he can do everything, and it's great working with him because he always takes it to the next level. Like I have an idea and then he builds on it because that's how he thinks, So did he do? I can't remember if he added anything to this, but he's usually the guy who adds on to it, I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes, but he also helped with papers raining down. Like he had this cannon that we put all this paper in, and he blew that up, so we had paper scraps raining and stuff. So he's really amazing. Wow. And it was just a fun thing to do.
Wow, it sounds like it's good to have a guy like this on your team.
Oh, you want that for sure. You need that. You don't want to take chances on that shit.
So, after you had all the footage, what was the editing process like?
I mean, I've been editing a lot myself. But that's another thing. If you want to talk about like starting out, like in the beginning, you think you need to do everything yourself, and that's what I did with a lot of the first things I did, especially music videos. I used to edit and shoot it all myself, but then at some point in the process, I was always told I should try and use editors and DPs and this and that. So I've been working with other editors a lot. The really good editors are always busy, so it's always hard to find good editors. But I was lucky. I've been having some good editors on a lot of the videos, and also on this one, I had this guy that he was really, really good. It's a little bit of a weird story because we were editing for a week, and it just didn't hit what I've kind of felt it could. So and we ran out of money. We couldn't keep him. So I actually in the end I was like, dude, I appreciate what you've done, but I need to sit down and look at this myself. And it's a bit sad because he wasn't too happy with that, and maybe it wasn't the right way to do it. Like I feel a little bit bad about it because I kind of fired him. But I was just so sure that there was something in there that and also because I haven't been working with editors that much because I'm used to editing myself, and sometimes the communication from an idea to the editor to the screen and then back and sometimes it's frustrating for me, and as you know, there was a lot of pressure from Warner for this to come out, so I had to just sit down and experiment a little bit with it myself without having to talk too much. So I did that. So I actually ended up doing the edit myself, and then it just came, banged it out in 2 days pretty much, from scratch. So yeah, it always depends. But I would, again, I'd suggest to work with editors when you can, because especially on longer formats too, because there's always stuff you're missing, and it's if it's a good editor, that'll bring something you haven't thought about, and you can, the collaborative process is supposed to add something. Obviously, if you're working with people that are not as good as you, then it's not going to add anything. Which is not what I'm saying about this guy. I'm just saying that with this, I just had to choose to try it on myself.
So you've completed the video, you edited yourself, you're really happy with it, and the team is happy with it. It's live. It slowly starts to build up, some hype around it, and it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. At what point did you realize that this is not one of those regular videos, this is a huge international hit, and the video will be seen by millions of people? What was going on through your mind?
I don't know. It's weird. Like, we did the video, I think it came out in December 15, and by then it already came out in Denmark and Scandinavia like half a year earlier. And the success it had was also why Warner ended up wanting to send it out internationally, so they could see what an impact it had in Scandinavia already, or how well it was doing. So the song was kind of big already when we did the video. So at that point, I wasn't really doubting whether it was gonna go big or not. And it's always a weird thing with music videos, because I know it's not because it's a great video that it's been viewed 800 million times. Like, I even wonder if people are still watching the video at any point, or if it's just something that's on a playlist that's on in the background or whatever. So it's obviously, it's cool that it's got that many views, and I still like the video, and I think it's great, obviously. And it's also that was kind of the reason why I got a music video agent in LA, and because it's the business over here is a lot about hype. It's obviously also has to have some quality to it, but it's also a lot about, like, if you've been working with bigger names already, and they can kind of put your name up on some kind of success. So I don't know, like, I remember in January or February it had 3 to 4 million hits a day. And that's when I could see, okay, this is going to go crazy. And it was just weird. So every time you go in and see, okay, 100 million, 150 million, it's like, what the hell? Like, it was mind blowing. But as I said, it's such a weird medium,
So currently you live in LA, and you've moved there, you work in projects there. What are you working on right now? What are some of your current projects?
So the big project right now is the Lukas Graham documentary that we've got some development money from the Danish National Film Institute and also DR. So it's in the works. So that I spend a lot of time like just writing and pitching on that, and I have another meeting coming up on the institute within these next few weeks, and then we'll know. It's always like, especially with artists like that, you have to decide whether you want to try and finance it commercially, saying like you bring in partners like Warner, and if they have any other partners they want to work with that could help you finance the movie. But when you bring in people like that, they all, like, whenever people bring in money, they also want to have a say on how the film comes out, which is natural, of course. That's one way to do it, or the other way to do it is to go with public money or film funds, which will consider the film an art project or like a real movie, so to say. It's not like a commercial for this artist, and that's what I'm hoping for, because I want to make a real a real story with a narrative that's universal and not just about Lukas, but something like a lot of like normal people can relate to and go away with, so a real movie, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're aiming at the institute right now, and that's what I'm spend a lot of time pitching on. So that's the main project.
Yeah.
And then there's always a little bit of this and that, like other things going on. I'm shooting on various projects. I'm working a lot with also a Danish company called Drive Studios that work with Tattoo, which is the biggest tattoo forum in the world. And I've done a lot of things. So I just pitched another little series to them that I would like to do on tattoo artists with a great story behind them. So I have been researching on that and trying to line. So I'm waiting for an answer on that too. So basically, the year, it's weird. Like when you're freelance, you kind of get into these routines during the year. Like the year always starts slow. Like January, February is often a little dead, or it seems like the year has to get started, and then this is like March, April, May is when it gets really busy up until June, and then the summer it kind of slows down, especially in Denmark. It's very much like that, and then it starts up in September again and up until Christmas, and then it's dead until. So that the year always goes like that. So, but in January I was out shooting again. I've been shooting all the Peter and Esben, the guys from Monte Carlo, which it's not called anymore when it's not DR, but now it's for UC. So we went to, I don't know if I can say this actually, it's probably public, but we went on a trip, that much I can say. So there should be something out soon. And it's friends now, so it's super fun. It's such a fun thing to do.
I can see that the narrative documentary style is something that is very important for you. And touching back on the big documentary project you're doing for Lukas, probably you cannot say too much, but from what I've read, it's many years of footage and you're following the story. Could you just talk a little bit more about that? I'm very curious about this kind of movie following a huge story in real time. So how many years worth of footage actually do you have?
So I started the first time he went to the US was, I always fuck up with the years, but I think it was 2012, early 12, and so and then we were shooting a lot. Like that was 2 weeks, and then again in 13, I was in a studio with him for about a month, and then it became more frequent after that. So 14 to 16, I was shooting quite a lot. I was on tour with him, and then the Grammys was that 17, I think. Yeah, it must have been early 17. And then since 17 and up until now, it's been further in between. His whole team, like the producers and Lasse, like the management and his producers, they all live here. Lukas is still in Denmark, but he's back and forth a lot. So I see him all the time. So I'm kind of like updated. We hang and stuff like with those guys. So I'm pretty much updated all the time on what's going on. If something crazy happens, I can always jump in and like shoot. And I've been shooting a little with him lately again. But it can go like months in between where something happens. But basically, like the heavy chunk is about 6 years, 7 years.
Wow. Actually, one of the problems that I have when I make a video is that sometimes I have so much footage that I feel overwhelmed, but nothing even close to the scale that you are. How do you deal with that? Having so much footage, so many moments, how do you not get too overwhelmed about which moment is the right one to pick and how to place them around? What is sort of your insight and workflow on that?
I think always when I'm shooting, I'm always like I don't plan so much, especially when you start shooting and you can. Oh, okay, let's put it this way. I always feel like a film is done in kind of like three stages. So you start with an idea, you have an idea of what you think you're gonna get, and you might even write that down and have and especially when you're working with people who invest in the film, you have to have something in writing saying this is the story. Then you go out and you deal with reality, and it's always different than what you think. So that's when you have to have all senses open, and some people just stick to what they started out with and go like they know exactly what they want, and they're gonna do whatever they can to get what they went out to that they're gonna to get, whereas when as much as I can, I always try to go out and figure out what the story is while I'm shooting. So I always follow certain, like I get ideas while I shoot on, oh, is this interesting? Is that interesting? Or maybe I should follow this track. Or, for instance, I was shooting with Oland. Where I did an Oland documentary for DR in 15, I think. And there was one scene, for instance, I went out. It was a photo shoot with her shooting for whatever, and I actually didn't think the scene was going to be really interesting when we went out because it was just a photo shoot. But we got out and we started shooting, and I did some behind the scenes, or like and then there was some talk about how much she would show of herself, like reveal or whatever, and then I started listening to that, and all of a sudden it turned into this whole talk about religion. And she's actually Catholic, and through that talk, it occurred to me she'd never really sold herself on sex, or like not saying sex, but on sexual material. She doesn't reveal too much. It's never been, like a lot of singers has elements of that in the way they sell themselves or whatever, and it's never been, and that, so all of a sudden this whole scene was the photo shoot was secondary. It's more about like religion and how much she reveals of herself, and how she's affected by that, and her parents' view on what she does, and blah 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 blah. So I'm just saying you should so that's the second stage of it, like what you go out and you try, you see what you get while things are happening. And then the third step is when you put it together, because is what the idea was while you're shooting, is that still going to work when you put it together in the editing? And often that turns out in a whole third way. So I mean, for me, it's all about the freestyle of the now, like of go with the flow,
Yeah, you're never married to an idea that you're stuck with. You're constantly involving with your idea.
Yeah, it's more when you do in the fiction and the music videos and stuff. It's often more,
you have
set
more
in stone.
Yeah.
Less freedom in the fiction and more freedom in the documentary.
Now for the gearheads out there, do you pay close attention to the gear that you use? Does the camera matter?
In general, or
yeah, perhaps in general, but also for your own experience.
I'm not a big gearhead. Like I hate gear basically. I think it's so boring. I'm really not into it. But I'm obviously want to control my image and like what I get out. So on the music videos, I talk to the DP, of course, like what they suggest and what kind of look we want, and we choose the gear from how we want it to look in the end. So that's what kind of camera, what kind of lenses, and how we should color grade it, how we're going to use the light to get these images and blah blah. And also even down to maybe grip sometimes, like do we use Steadicam, is it going to be handheld, or all this stuff. So that's one way. Then when I shoot documentary, whether it's my own or if I shoot for other people, there's other things that comes into place, like how heavy is the camera? Can I shoot reportage 12 hours a day with this without breaking my shoulders, you know. How do I get as light as possible and still make it steady? You know, I want a steady rig, but if I use a steady rig in a car, it's not going to be steady because the car is going to be bouncing around. So maybe a monopod is better. What lens should I use for what? You know, like all these different things. So, but I'm not the kind of guy that goes out and knows everything about all gear coming out every month. Like, I couldn't care less if it's this or that. I've always just been using, like, Canon and Sony is what I've been using from the beginning, more or less by coincidence. I'm not saying Canon is better than Nikon, or like you should use Avid instead of Premiere or whatever. Like, all of this it's just tools, I think. Like, basically it's about you knowing what you want, and if you know if you know what you want your images to look like, or your editing to look like, or the color grading, or then you just have to experiment and see, you know, how to get there, and you'll eventually.
I think you would agree that at the end of the day, it's all about the story, and everything else is just tools.
Yeah.
So as we're approaching the end of this podcast, the main question that everyone asked me to ask you is, what advice would you give for someone who is just starting out? They really want to make documentaries, they really want to make music videos, they really want to make a name for themselves. They have some skills, they have a camera. What is your advice that you would give for those people?
Just do it. just get going. I think, like, nowadays it's so you can even do something brilliant on your phone. So I think it's mainly about a good idea. Like, just start shooting, start editing, like, just get it going. You know, look for interesting stories and ideas, and just be creative with it. Because nowadays I don't think earlier it was enough to just be able to technically be able to work a camera, or like be able to technically edit, you know, because that was in the whole education in itself, pretty much, to just on the technical side know what to do. Now it's just, I mean, you obviously also has to know that now, but if you can buy a used camera, you can start experimenting with, like, manually how it works, and get to a point where you can control it all. And from then on, it's basically, a lot of it is just about being creative. It's much more important now, I think, on every aspect of film and TV making, to be creative with what you do. Like, have good ideas and do it, and be critical on yourself. Like, make sure that what you do is somehow stands out, or is good quality, but I think that's probably the most important. And be nice. Like, don't want to work with people that are not nice, you know. Like, don't be an asshole. And it's not just about the business, but it's also about how you approach people. If we're all assholes when we go out and shoot in the real world, then people get sick of us. And already I think there's so much bad TV out there now, making people look bad, because there's so much shit out there. Like, I don't have to mention anything, but certain shows are almost devoted to make people look bad, you know, and people are kind of like accepting that nowadays, that it's part of the game to look bad, paradise. But it's I think it's just it's super important, because it's like the psychological aspect of filmmaking, whether it be documentary or how you treat artists on a big high level or whatever. Like, everybody needs to get along, and so I think it's super important to the way you act towards your environment.
Wow, that was great to hear. Before we go, I want to roll the red carpet for you, and if there's anything you want to plug, anything that you want them to check out, to watch, to follow you somewhere, now it's your time.
Yeah, I don't know what to add.
I will say it for you. Everyone, go follow René on Instagram. Check out his website, all social media. They'll be linked in the description. And if he wants me to link something else, it will be also in the description. Make sure to go and check out everything he does because he's an amazing filmmaker and you can learn a lot from his style. But René, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. This was very valuable for everyone, including me, as someone who wants to do this in the future. Keep up the great work, and we're all looking forward to see your next big project.
Thanks so much for having me, and that was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me talk.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Trifon Georgiev, for watching. Shout out to you, and thank you for helping me with the podcast. Everyone, subscribe to the Devoted Daydream YouTube channel. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify, SoundCloud, and every major podcast platform. Thank you again so much. Devoted Daydream out.